Today we're going to make you an expert on the straddle handstand. Now the straddle handstand can be done back to wall like so. It can be done chest to wall like this. And it can obviously be done freestanding in the middle of the room. Now it's a really important key position that's going to take your handstands to another level. Because if you can learn the straight handstand, the straddle handstand, and the tuck handstand, it means that you're not going to have any gaps when you move your legs and your hips when you're working things like press handstands, handstand to planche, stool to presses, handstand push up variations, and lots of other calisthenics skills. And if your end goal is a one-arm handstand, the most position, the most common position to learn it in is a straddle position. One big thing you need to understand when it comes to the straddle handstand is everyone's is going to look very different. We all have different limb length, we all have different flexibility, not just in the hips, in the overhead position, and that's going to dictate the width, so how wide our position is. So are we here, are we here, are we here, and how much we pike the hips. So piking the hips means we're closing this angle. So this is a non-piked handstand, this is piked. So see the hip is now closed. In the straddle, it closes to some extent. Depending on your flexibility, the position is going to look very different. The main thing we need to focus on is the legs becoming part of the torso, so your body is one segment. What we don't want to have is legs that are on top of the torso that aren't connected to one another and aren't connected to the base, to that torso, to those arms. It means that it's really hard to control. It's going to be very inconsistent and your progressions are going to be very limited, or your progress is going to be very limited. You can get an idea of what your position is going to look like by laying on the floor. So if I lay in this position on the floor, in that hollow body position, now if I open my legs as wide as I can, that's it. I can't get any further without closing the hip. See, the hip is closing, so I'm piking. Now it's going to be exaggerated on the floor because my hips can't go backwards. My only option is my feet to go forwards. Now there is going to be my straddle position. The point there where my low back pushes into the floor, that's not my straddle handstand anymore. That's going to be used for things like straddle presses, but my straddle handstand is going to be there, where I've got a small gap underneath my low back, and I can lock that position in. That's what we're going to be looking like in our straddle handstand. Now I'm sure you would have found already through your handstand practice that the shoulder position is really hard to control, especially when we try and open the shoulder into a stacked straight position. So like in the straight position, we could be like this with our shoulders, we could be like this, we could be like this, and that position is going to affect our balance, our room for error in the handstand, and just how the handstand looks. And it's exactly the same in the straddle position, but it's just a little bit more demanding for most people when they're trying to maximize their split, because our body wants to compensate in the shoulders, and the way it compensates in the shoulder is by closing. So let's experiment with that shoulder and straddle position with the back to wall handstand drill. So I'm going to kick up to my standard wall handstand, my straight position, and then I'm just going to try and open into straddle. So I'm going to take the butt back towards the wall and my legs forwards. Now what you'll notice there is that my shoulders are staying more or less on top of my hands, and that wants to be the goal. What you're going to find most people do is this, and their head gets in the way, either like this with the shoulders or with the head itself there. So what we're going to try and do is push away. Now the risk of pushing away with the shoulders is we create a really big arch and our butt sits back too hard into the wall. So we end up looking like this. Now this is a very heavy, overbalanced handstand, meaning if we move the wall out of the way, I'm going to fall flat on my back, and you can see that by the feet are stacked on top of the hips, and the shoulders are more or less on top of the hands, but they're not helping the handstand in any way. My body just wants to collapse in this void. So we want to bring the hands as close as we can to the wall, but also have the butt just touching on the wall without the head and shoulders touching in any way. So we want to try and find a position that looks more like this. So the butt is light on the wall, my feet are piked in this direction. So my feet are this way, not this way. And you should feel that your legs have become part of your torso. So you've closed, and this is one piece. It's not wobbling around on top. So it will take a little bit of time to find that sweet spot that matches your flexibility in your hips, in your legs, in your shoulders, in your spine, and just the position your body is comfortable to get into. Remember, it's going to look different for everyone, but try and have some sort of pike. So feet this way, butt backwards, and as best you can, try and keep those shoulders on top of the hands. Another nice way of playing with the straddle position is chest to wall. So now we have the toes touching and our hips pushed backwards. So I start in my standard chest to wall position, and then I'm going to open my legs out to the side to my straddle, try and keep my shoulders on top, try and keep my focal position looking down. We don't want to be doing this because it doesn't carry over to the freestanding version. We want to be like this. So I'm trying to squeeze those hips so they become part of the torso in that piked position, the shoulders on top of the hands, and my toes should be light on the wall. I don't want to be heavy into the wall. And obviously I don't want to be too far this way because I'm going to splat over towards overbalance. And if you do feel scared in that position, have someone lightly spot you here, just so you can comfortably explore the position, because if you're scared, you're just going to put all your weight into the wall. It's not going to really carry over to the freestanding version that we're aiming for. So once we're starting to understand the position a little bit more, obviously we can just hold there for time. So we could just go, I'm going to accumulate 30 seconds in that straddle position per set. And that's a great way of conditioning the position so your body starts to become happy to hang out there and it knows where to go. So it knows where to go. Now ideally, if you've got a little bit more experience with freestanding handstand, we can start to pull the straddle position away from the wall. First, we need to lock the position in. We don't want to be changing position as we pull into our handstand. So we go with that back to wall position, we find our straddle handstand, lock it in. Now I'm just going to push lightly through the fingers, reach up and away. So I'm going tall into the handstand. We don't want to be reaching in this way because we're just going to fall down. It wants to be like a up movement, exactly the same as when we pull in a straight position, we reach up to our handstand, not this way, up. On top of the base, it's going to be easier to control. And then we can just start to hold there for time in that balanced position. And again, get to the point where we can accumulate 30 seconds there comfortably. Now, if you already have way more control in the freestanding handstand and you can control your straight handstand consistently, you could do exactly the same thing, but away from the wall. So you kick up to your straight handstand, then you open to your straddle, lock it in, and hold there for time. Ideally, once you finish the time, go back to your straight position, show control before coming back down. So then we've got those three options. We've got back to wall, we've got chest to wall, and we've got freestanding. We have the conditioning holds, we can just hold there for time. But the other drill I'd highly recommend you start to play with is the scissors. The transitioning between the straight and the straddle. Because remember, in the straight position, we don't want a piked hips. In the straddle, we do want a pike. So understanding how to transition between those two positions is really important. You want to feel like your straight, your tuck, and your straddle all become home positions that your body just knows how to get to. It can hang out there for time, and it can easily go between them. So back to wall version, if we find that straight position, so see no pike in the hips, I'm not piked like this. I have a straight line from the shoulder to the feet, and then I open the straddle, my butt goes backwards, my feet go to pike. There's my straddle position, I could flow that off the wall. And then to get back to my straight, watch the hip, it opens back up, the heels touch. What we don't want to happen is this. So now I've piked in the straight position, or when we come back from the straddle position, we don't want to do this and then this. We ideally want to see it happen as one movement. It opens the hip as my heels come to the wall. Now that's pretty tricky to do, but it's a great drill, and I try and aim for around 5 to 10 repetitions of going from straddle to straight to straddle. Now again, if your freestanding is stronger, start in your straight position, try and find your straddle, lock it in, show control, go back to your straight, open hip, and you can see the hip change in position on every repetition. And that's what we want to be aiming for, to get 5 to 10 repetitions there, hitting a definite straddle, hitting a definite straight, showing control. But that is going to take quite a bit of time to get that sort of control, especially for repetitions. Now, I would mainly use the back to wall variation and the freestanding for that drill. I wouldn't normally use the chest to wall, because if you're using the chest to wall, in a lot of ways, this is actually trickier than the freestanding version, because you have a way smaller room for error. Because if I get it wrong, I'm going to knock myself like this because the wall gets in the way. So the chest to wall is a good positioning drill, but I wouldn't use that so much for the repetitions. I'd go between the back to wall and the freestanding. Now, like all these skills, it's much easier to video yourself and look back between the reps and the sets to see what you're actually doing instead of what you think you're doing. Watch that focal point, make sure you're looking down towards the floor all the time. The temptation will be to look into the wall or look away from the wall because mobility is easier that way, but balance is definitely not. Doing a head-in straddle position, freestanding is way more advanced than looking down towards the floor. Let me know if you have any questions regarding the straddle handstand or your handstands and calisthenics training in general. If you're after help with your training, check out my app and my website. Links are down in the description. And I'll speak to you in the next one.